He spent 5 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, only to walk free into a nightmare worse than prison. This is a story of love, betrayal, and a revenge plot so chilling, it left a town forever scarred. What would you do if the person you die for decided to destroy you? In 2015, Austin, Texas, seemed like the perfect backdrop for a fairy tale. Skyscrapers gleamed under the relentless sun, and young power couple Michael and Clara Turner were the envy of their friends. But fairy tales don't warn you about the cracks in the glass slipper, or the lies that can shatter a life forever. Michael Turner was the kind of man who believed in grand gestures. A rising star at his law firm, he'd built his life around one unwavering truth: his love for Clara. She was sharp, ambitious, and carried herself with a quiet intensity that made people lean in when she spoke. But behind her polished smile, Clara harbored doubts. Was Michael in love with her, or the idea of being a hero? Their marriage, once a whirlwind of late-night adventures and whispered promises, had begun to feel like performance. And performances always end. It started with rain, not the gentle kind, but a downpour that turned highways into rivers. Clara was driving home from a client dinner when her SUV hydroplaned. The impact was sudden. A blur of brake lights and a figure crumpled on the asphalt. Panic clawed at her throat as she dialed Michael. What she told him next would change everything. "I killed someone." Without hesitation, Michael made a choice. He'd take the blame. After all, what was love without sacrifice? But sacrifice, as he'd soon learn, is just another word for collateral damage. When police arrived at their doorstep, Michael didn't flinch. He confessed to a crime he didn't commit, his voice steady as he described losing control of the car. Detective Maria Reyes, a 20-year veteran with a knack for sniffing out lies, noticed inconsistencies. Witnesses swore the driver was a woman. Tire marks suggested the victim had been struck twice. But Michael stuck to his story. For Clara, he'd become a fortress. Little did he know, fortresses crumble from the inside. Behind bars, Michael clung to hope like a lifeline. He wrote Clara letters filled with promises. Promises to rebuild their life, to forgive, to forget. Each page dripped with loyalty that bordered on desperation. Clara wrote back, her words careful, rehearsed. She thanked him. She missed him. She lied. While Michael counted down the days, Clara began counting the ways to disappear. Michael's best friend since college, the godfather to their non-existent children, and the man who'd always watched Clara a little too closely. David became Clara's confidant, her shoulder to cry on, her escape from the guilt gnawing at her conscience. He brought her coffee, listened to her fears, and slowly, methodically, rewrote her story. "You deserve happiness," he'd say, his voice smooth as bourbon, even if it's not with him. Clara's guilt morphed into something darker, resentment. Why should she spend 5 years in a prison of her own making? Michael had chosen this. She hadn't. Prison changed Michael. The man who'd once argued cases in tailored suits now shuffled through cafeteria lines in orange scrubs. He replayed that final moment with Clara obsessively, the way she clung to him, her tears hot against his neck, her whispered, "I'll wait." But waiting, as the months dragged on, felt less like hope and more like a countdown to a truth he refused to see. Meanwhile, Clara and David's friendship curdled into something dangerous. Late-night texts turned into hotel receipts. Shared laughs became shared beds. And all the while, Clara's journal filled with entries that would later make jurors shudder. "I can't breathe. He loves me too much." On the day Michael was sentenced, Clara wore a white dress, a cruel parody of their wedding day. As the judge slammed the gavel, sealing Michael's fate, she mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." But sorry doesn't erase lies. Sorry doesn't explain why. Just 3 months later, Clara would stand in front of a mirror in another white dress this time, with David smoothing the veil over her shoulders. Love had made Michael a martyr. Lies had made him a ghost. Before we go further, what would you have done in Michael's shoes? Sacrifice your freedom for love, or question the truth? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever trusted someone blindly, hit like. Let's see how many of us are out there. 5 months into his sentence, Michael Turner learned the hard way that prison walls aren't made of steel or concrete. They're built from silence. the kind that stretches between unanswered letters, the hollow space where trust used to live. And while Michael clung to the fraying threads of his old life, Clara was already weaving a new one, with threads dipped in betrayal. Michael's days blurred into a monotonous rhythm, fluorescent lights humming at 5 a.m., tasteless meals swallowed under the watchful eyes of guards, nights spent staring at a photo of Clara tucked beneath his thin mattress. He marked time by her letters, neatly penned lies on perfumed stationery. "I miss you," she wrote. "I'll wait." But waiting, Michael soon realized, was a language Clara no longer spoke. Her words grew colder, shorter, like a fire slowly suffocating. Meanwhile, 12 miles away, Clara was burning down their marriage in secret. She'd started meeting David at a dimly lit wine bar off South Congress, a place they'd once all frequented as friends. David's laughter, once a familiar comfort, now felt charged, dangerous. He leaned closer when they talked, his hand lingering on her arm a beat too long. "You're too loyal for your own good," he'd whisper, swirling his Cabernet. "He's not coming back, the man you married." Clara told herself it was harmless, but harm, like love, often starts small. Back in prison, cracks began to form in Michael's carefully constructed reality. A new cellmate, Javier, a former mechanic serving time for arson. Notice the stacks of Clara's letters. Women like her. Javier muttered one night, "They don't write love notes. They write obituaries." Michael brushed it off, until Javier pointed out the postmark dates. Clara's letters arrived like clockwork every Tuesday. But the mailroom logs showed they'd been mailed on Fridays. 3 days later. Why the delay? What was she hiding in those lost hours? The answer lay in the wreckage of the hit and run. Detective Reyes had quietly reopened the case, uncovering flaws that reeked of manipulation. Tire tracks of the scene didn't match Michael's sedan. A security camera from a nearby gas station, conveniently malfunctioning that night, had been tampered with. And then there was a witness, a homeless veteran named Earl, who'd initially told police the driver was a woman in a blue SUV. 2 weeks later, he recanted. Why? Because David Cole had slipped him $5,000 and a one-way bus ticket to El Paso. Clara's guilt metastasized into something uglier, justification. She filled her journal with looping, frantic script. "Michael chose this," she wrote. "He wanted to be the hero. Heroes don't get happy endings." David stoked the resentment, rewriting her guilt as liberation. He moved into their guest house first, to help with bills, he claimed, then into her bed. Their affair was methodical, almost clinical. Tuesday nights, while Michael's letters languished in her purse, Clara and David dined at their favorite sushi spot. Thursday afternoons, while Michael stared at her photo, they checked into room 214 of the Austin Royale Hotel. Love, Clara told herself, was just another transaction, and she was done paying for Michael's mistakes. One frigid December morning, Javier cornered Michael in the prison yard. "Listen," he hissed, "my cousin works at the county clerk's office. Saw your wife's name on a marriage license application." Michael laughed, a raw, broken sound. Clara wouldn't. Javier cut in. She already did. He slid a crumpled photocopy into Michael's hand. Clara Turner and David Cole. Application date, November 14th. Michael's vision swam. November 14th. The day Clara's letter had gushed about planting tulips in their garden. Tulips they'd picked out together. Tulips that didn't bloom until spring. That night, Michael lay awake, Javier's words carving grooves into his mind. Down the hall, a man screamed himself hoarse. Somewhere beyond the barbed wire, Clara was choosing china patterns. And David? He was drafting a text he'd sent at dawn. "Meet me at the courthouse. No more hiding." Love, it seemed, wasn't just blind, it was merciless. What would you believe? The woman you die for? Or the stranger risking his safety to warn you? Drop your answer below. And if you've ever uncovered a lie that changed everything, hit like. Let's see how many hearts here have survived betrayal. 5 months into his sentence, Michael Turner learned the hard way that prison walls aren't made of steel or concrete. They're built from silence. The kind that stretches between unanswered letters. The hollow space where trust used to live. And while Michael clung to the fraying threads of his old life, Clara was already weaving a new one, with threads dipped in betrayal. Prison changed Michael. The man who'd once argued cases in tailored suits now shuffled through cafeteria lines in orange scrubs. He replayed that final moment with Clara obsessively, the way she clung to him, her tears hot against his neck, her whispered, "I'll wait." But waiting, as the month dragged on, felt less like hope and more like a countdown to a truth he refused to see. Meanwhile, Clara and David's friendship curdled into something dangerous. Late-night texts turned into hotel receipts. Shared laughs became shared beds. And all the while, Clara's journal filled with entries that would later make jurors shudder. "I can't breathe. He loves me too much." 16 months into Michael's sentence, the city of Austin buzzed with gossip. Not about the tech boom or the latest barbecue joint, but about a wedding invitation. Ivory cardstock, gold calligraphy, and two names that shouldn't have been side by side. Clara Turner and David Cole. Love, it seemed, had a way of rewriting history and erasing loyalties. Clara's dress cost $8,000, a detail she'd later regret. Silk chiffon, lace sleeves, a train that pulled behind her like spilled milk. She told herself it was practical. Why waste a perfectly good gown on a courthouse ceremony? But practicality couldn't mask the irony. David stood at the altar in the same charcoal suit he'd worn as Michael's best man 3 years earlier. The same smile, too, the same hollow charm. As vows were exchanged, Clara's hands trembled, not from guilt, but from the weight of the lies she'd yet to confess. She was pregnant, and the timeline? Ambiguous enough to haunt her. Hope is a dangerous thing to bring to a parole hearing. Michael Turner learned this the hard way on a sweltering August morning, as he sat shackled in the courtroom, staring at the back of Clara's head. She hadn't visited him in 9 months. She hadn't written. But there she was, perfume trailing behind her like a ghost, pleading for his early release. Not out of love, but fear, because Clara Turner Cole had just discovered she was pregnant. And the math didn't add up. Back in his cell, Michael tore a page from a library book, Sun Tzu's The Art War, and began drafting his own battle plan. Step 1, feign compliance. He enrolled in anger management courses, volunteered in the prison garden, wrote gushing letters to Clara about their future child. Step 2, study. He devoured forensic textbooks, memorized Texas penal codes, and learned how to mask GPS data from ankle monitors. Step 3, wait. Parole would come eventually. And when it did, he'd be ready. David Cole survived the fentanyl-laced water bottle, but barely. 3 days in the ICU, his heart stuttering like a faulty engine, left him gaunt and twitchy. Clara hovered at his bedside, her pregnancy bump barely visible under a loose sweater, her mind racing. Was this karma or a warning? But the truth, when it came, would be far colder. Michael Turner wasn't done yet, and his next move would turn a lakeside cabin, once filled with laughter, into a tomb. Michael stepped inside, a shotgun cradled in his arms. Clara's pleas echoed off the walls. "It's your baby, please." But his eyes were flat, dead. "You picked him," he said. "Now live with it." The first shot took Dave in the chest, the sound swallowed by the thick logs. The second grazed Clara's shoulder as she fled upstairs. Blood smeared the banister, a macabre trail leading to the attic. There, in the cramped space where they'd once stored Christmas decorations, she found a box of old letters. Her letters, every lie she'd written, preserved like evidence. The cabin fire left behind more than ashes. It exposed a web of lies so tangled, even Detective Reyes couldn't untangle it at first glance. David Cole's charred Rolex still ticked in the rubble, a morbid metronome counting down to the truth. But truth in this town had a way of bending. And Michael Turner? He was just getting started. Forensic analyst Tyrell Carter noticed it first. The shotgun shells at the cabin matched the police auction guns sold 6 months prior. The buyer? John Smith with a burner email. But the kickback pattern on Michael's old range targets, recovered from his storage unit, told a different story. Michael favored left-handed weapons. The cabin's killer was right-handed, a discrepancy Reyes couldn't ignore. Had Michael hired help, or was Lacey being framed twice over? Every prison has its currency. Some trade cigarettes, others favors. But at the Travis County Correctional Complex, the most valuable commodity was silence. Silence bought Michael Turner 5 years protection. Silence kept Javier Bull Maddox alive. But silence, like all currencies, inflates. And when Bull finally spoke, his words detonated like a landmine in Detective Reyes' lap. Javier Maddox wasn't a man prone to regrets. He'd burned houses, broken bones, and buried secrets without a second thought. But when parole dangled in front of him, a chance to meet his newborn granddaughter, he traded his loyalty for a name, Michael Turner. The deal was simple. Javier's testimony for freedom. What he gave Reyes, though, was a grenade, a voicemail, recorded days before the cabin fire, of Michael hissing, "The lawyer dies first, then her." The timestamp? 3 hours before David Cole's last breath. DNA doesn't lie, but people do. And when the test results landed on Detective Reyes' desk, they didn't just rewrite Clara Turner's story. They erased it. The child buried beneath the oak tree wasn't David's. It wasn't Michael's. It belonged to a man whose name no one had spoken in years. A man whose shadow stretched further than anyone imagined, including Clara herself. The USB drive held security footage from the night of the hit and run. Clara's SUV didn't hydroplane. It accelerated. The victim, a DEA informant named Greg Harlow, had been lured to that stretch of road by David. Clara's mistake was a hit, and Michael's sacrifice, a scripted tragedy. The dead don't make phone calls. But on a rain-slick Tuesday morning, Detective Reyes received a voicemail that defied logic. A garbled voice, half drowned in static, whispered 2 words, "He's alive." The caller ID? Greg Harlow's disconnected number. The timestamp? 3 days after his funeral. Some truths refused to stay buried, and some monsters refused to die. David's corpse had been a masterpiece of misdirection. The body burned beyond recognition in the cabin. A homeless man, ID swapped by Marcus Vale's contacts. David's escape? Funded by the same drug empire he'd used to trap Clara. The casket on La Fantasma? Empty. A decoy. Reyes traced a boat to a cove littered with shipwrecks, where locals whisper of a devil in white who paid cash for silence. David wasn't just alive. He was expanding his empire, using Michael as a scapegoat to vanish forever. Justice isn't blind. It's calculated. And on a frostbitten morning in Prague, Detective Maria Reyes stood on the Charles Bridge, staring at a man who no longer existed. His face was different. His voice was softer. But the serpent tattoo peeking above his collar? A sliver of the monster she'd chased across 3 continents. The monster the world believed was dead. But monsters don't die. They evolve. Michael vanished again. But 3 weeks later, Reyes received a postcard from Thailand. No message, just a pressed red tulip. She burned it. In Austin, Clara's journal sold at auction for $1.3 million. True Crime Podcast dissected the tragic love triangle. No one questioned the gaps. No one ever does. Was justice served? Or sacrificed? Tell me your verdict below and hit like if you've ever kept a secret the world wasn't ready to hear. Sometimes the truth isn't a weapon. It's a wound. And so the twisted tale of Michael, Clara, and David fades into the shadows, where love, betrayal, and revenge blur into something darker. A story where the guilty wore innocence like a mask, and the wrong became monsters of their own making. But before you go, ask yourself this. Could you have walked away? Or would you, too, have let vengeance write the ending? If this story left you questioning where justice ends and obsession begins, hit like and subscribe for more true crime tales that dig into the darkest corners of the human heart. And drop a comment below. Who do you think paid the highest price? Michael? Clara? Or the truth itself? Until next time, stay curious. But maybe sleep with the lights on. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more crime stories.